The afternoon sun blazed over the quiet neighborhood as a man in a wheelchair rolled slowly down the sidewalk. His strong arms moved the wheels with ease, his face calm but focused. He wasn't in a hurry, just enjoying the fresh air. To anyone passing by, he looked like an ordinary man going about his day. But this was no ordinary man, and the events about to unfold would prove just how wrong first impressions could be. A police cruiser turned the corner, its tires crunching against the pavement. Inside, 2 officers scanned the streets, their eyes sharp. They had been called about a suspicious person in the area, someone supposedly casing houses. When they spotted the man in the wheelchair, something didn't sit right with them. Maybe it was the way he glanced at the houses as he passed, or maybe it was just a bad hunch. Either way, they decided to stop him. The cruiser pulled up beside him, and the officers stepped out. "Sir, can we have a word with you?" one asked, his tone firm but not yet aggressive. The man stopped, turning his wheelchair slightly to face them. His expression was neutral, but there was a quiet confidence in his eyes. The officers asked for his ID. The man didn't argue, he reached into his pocket and handed it over. But as one officer looked at the identification, his eyebrows furrowed. There was something different about it. The name, the details, it didn't match what they expected. The other officer, growing impatient, stepped closer. "Mind telling us what you're doing in this neighborhood?" The man took a slow breath. "Just taking a ride. I live a few blocks away." His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, like he knew where this was heading. The officers exchanged glances. Something felt off. Maybe he was lying. Maybe he was involved in something. Without thinking, one of them moved behind the wheelchair, gripping the handles. "We're going to need you to come with us," he said. That's when everything changed. The man's posture stiffened. "I'd advise you to step back," he said calmly. But the officer didn't listen. He started pushing the wheelchair toward the cruiser. Big mistake. In one swift motion, the man in the wheelchair twisted his body, knocking the officer's hands away. Before anyone could react, he pulled out a badge from his other pocket, a badge that made both officers freeze. This wasn't just any man. And they had just made a terrible mistake. The air grew thick with tension as the officers stared at the badge in the man's hand. Their expressions shifted from suspicion to disbelief, then to something worse, dread. The gleaming shield wasn't just any ID. It marked him as someone with authority, someone who shouldn't have been treated this way. One of the officers, the younger one, swallowed hard. His fingers twitched near his belt, as if unsure whether to reach for his radio or step back. The older officer, his face tight, finally spoke. "You should have told us who you were from the start." The man in the wheelchair didn't blink. "I shouldn't have to." His voice was low, controlled, but the weight behind those words was unmistakable. A crowd had started to gather. Neighbors peeked through curtains. A teenager across the street pulled out his phone, recording silently. The officers noticed, and the younger one shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going how they'd planned. The man tucked his badge away, his movements deliberate. "Now, if you're done," he said, gripping his wheels, "I'll be on my way." But pride is a dangerous thing. The older officer, his jaw clenched, blocked the path. "Hold on. We still need to verify this." The man exhaled, patience wearing thin. "Call it in, then." The younger officer hesitated but finally radioed dispatch, muttering the badge number. Static crackled before a voice responded, a voice that sounded suddenly alert. The dispatcher asked him to repeat the number. Then, after a pause, came the words that made both officers go still. "Stand down." Immediately. The younger officer's face paled. The older one stiffened, but before he could argue, the man in the wheelchair spoke again. "You were told to stop a suspicious person. Was it the wheelchair? Or was it me?" Neither officer answered. The truth was obvious. A car screeched to a halt nearby. A man in a suit stepped out, his expression hard. The officers straightened. This was someone even they couldn't ignore. The suited man didn't waste time. What the hell is going on here? The older officer started to explain, but the man in the wheelchair cut in. They decided I didn't belong here. The suited man's glare could have melted steel. He turned to the officers. You just tried to detain a decorated army captain. A man who lost his legs clearing bombs, so idiots like you could sleep safe at night. Silence. The crowd murmured. The teenager filming zoomed in closer. The officers looked like they wanted the ground to swallow them whole. The suited man leaned down, speaking low so only they could hear. Walk away. Now. Before this gets worse. The officers didn't argue. They left, fast. But the man in the wheelchair didn't move. His face was unreadable, but his hands gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles whitened. This wasn't about pride or revenge. It was about something deeper. The suited man crouched beside him. You okay? The man finally released a long breath. I will be. But the story was far from over. The suited man helped steady the wheelchair as the crowd slowly dispersed, whispers trailing behind them. Some neighbors lingered, unsure whether to approach or give space. The teenager recording lowered his phone but didn't walk away. His fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating before hitting upload. The man in the wheelchair barely noticed. His mind was somewhere else, somewhere far from this street, far from the flashing lights and prying eyes. The suited man, who had introduced himself as Reynolds, studied him carefully. You need a ride home? The man shook his head. I'm fine. His voice was steady, but his fingers tapped restlessly against the armrest. Reynolds sighed, rubbing his temple. Look, I'm sorry about those guys. They're rookies. Stupid, but not malicious. The man finally looked up, his gaze sharp. Does it matter? Reynolds didn't have an answer. A car horn blared down the street, snapping them both back to the moment. Reynolds straightened his tie. At least let me buy you a coffee. You look like you could use it. The man hesitated, then gave a short nod. They rolled into a small diner a few blocks away, the kind of place with sticky menus and coffee that never stopped refilling itself. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, barely glanced at the wheelchair as she slid 2 mugs onto the table. You boys want anything else? Just the coffee, thanks, Reynolds said. She nodded and walked off, leaving them in the quiet hum of the diner. The man wrapped his hands around the warm mug but didn't drink. Reynolds leaned forward. You know, most people would be screaming for those cops' badges by now. The man smirked, but there was no humor in it. Would it change anything? Reynolds opened his mouth, then shut it. He took a slow sip of coffee instead. Outside, the sky darkened as clouds rolled in. The first drops of rain tapped against the window. The man finally spoke again, his voice quieter. 3 years ago, I was in Kandahar. My unit was clearing a village. Kids there, they'd play in the streets, same as anywhere. One of them ran up to us, crying. Said his brother was trapped under rubble. Reynolds set his mug down, listening. The man's grip tightened around his own cup. I knew it could be a trap. But what if it wasn't? He exhaled. Turns out, it was both. The kid wasn't lying, his brother really was stuck. And the insurgents really had rigged the building to blow. A clap of thunder rattled the diner's windows. The waitress glanced over but didn't interrupt. I got the kid out, the man continued. His brother too. Didn't even see the second device until it was too late. His hand drifted absently to his thigh, where the fabric of his pants lay flat against the chair. Woke up 2 weeks later in Germany. They gave me a medal. Funny thing is, I'd make the same call again. Reynolds was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, and today? The man finally took a sip of his coffee. It had gone cold. Today, I just wanted to take a damn walk. Across the diner, a TV mounted above the counter flickered to a news segment. The waitress turned up the volume, and both men froze as footage from earlier played across the screen: the officers, the wheelchair, the tense standoff. The cheerin' at the bottom read, "Veteran detained by police, department promises investigation." Reynolds groaned. Well. That was fast. The man just stared at his reflection in the rain-streaked window. The face looking back at him was tired. Not angry. Not even sad. Just tired. The waitress walked over, refilling their mugs without asking. "On the house," she said, patting the man's shoulder like she'd known him for years. Then, with a glance at the TV, she added, "Damn shame, what they did to you." The man gave her a small, grateful nod. Reynolds pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages with a frown. "We need to get ahead of this. The department's going to want to." "No." The man cut him off. "No statements. No press conferences. I'm done being today's headline." Reynolds hesitated. "They'll spin it if you don't. Let them." The man pushed back from the table. "Thanks for the coffee." As he wheeled toward the door, Reynolds called after him, "What are you going to do?" The man didn't turn around. "Same thing I always do. Keep moving." The bell above the door jingled as he left. Outside, the rain fell harder now, washing the streets clean. Somewhere in the city, a police chief was yelling at a screen. Somewhere else, a teenager's video was going viral. And somewhere in between, a man in a wheelchair rolled through the storm, his head held high. The rain fell in heavy sheets as the man wheeled himself down the sidewalk, water soaking through his clothes. He barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, back in that diner, back in that desert, back in 100 moments that had led him here. A car slowed beside him, its window rolling down, but he didn't turn. Not until he heard the voice. "Hey! Get in." It was the teenager from earlier, the one who had filmed everything. His car was an old Honda, the kind held together by duct tape and hope. The kid leaned over, pushing the passenger door open. "You're gonna catch pneumonia out here." The man hesitated. The kid shrugged. "Or don't. But I'm not leaving till you do." Something about the kid's stubbornness made the man relent. He transferred into the passenger seat, folding his wheelchair and hauling it into the back. The car smelled like fast food and wet sneakers. "You got a name?" the kid asked, pulling back onto the road. The man wiped rainwater from his face. "You got one?" "Jay." The kid glanced at him. "And yeah, I know who you are. Everyone does now." He nodded to his phone, where notifications were blowing up. The video had over 200,000 views in under an hour. The man sighed. "Great." Jay drove in silence for a few blocks before speaking again. "So. Those cops, they really didn't know?" "No." "And you're not gonna, sue them? Go on TV? Something?" The man stared out the window. "What for?" Jay frowned. "Dude. They treated you like crap." "Yeah. And?" Jay opened his mouth, then shut it. He didn't get it. Most people wouldn't. The man changed the subject. "Where we going?" "Your place. Unless you got somewhere else." The man gave him an address. Jay plugged it into his GPS, then stiffened. "Wait. You live there?" The neighborhood that popped up was one of the wealthiest in the city, gated mansions, private security, the works. The man smirked. "Problem?" Jay's grip tightened on the wheel. No. Just, you don't seem like the type. What's the type? You know. Rich guy. The man chuckled. Money doesn't change what people see first. He tapped his leg. Jay swallowed, suddenly embarrassed. Meanwhile, across town, the police station was in chaos. The chief's office was packed, officers, union reps, city officials, all talking over each other. The two officers from earlier sat in the corner, their faces pale. This is a PR nightmare, the chief snapped. Do you have any idea how this looks? The older officer, Daniels, clenched his fists. We followed protocol. He matched the description. A description that said, tall black male in a hoodie, not war hero in a wheelchair, the chief roared. The younger officer, Ruiz, looked like he wanted to vanish. We didn't know. That's the problem. The chief threw a newspaper onto the desk. The headline blared, decorated vet humiliated by cops, again. A city official cleared her throat. We need damage control. An apology. Maybe a press conference with the captain. The chief rubbed his temples. Good luck. Reynolds says he wants nothing to do with us. Silence fell. Then, from the back of the room, a voice spoke up, an older detective, leaning against the wall. Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Everyone turned. The detective shrugged. Instead of, how do we fix this, maybe we should ask, why did it happen in the first place? The room went very still. Back in the car, Jay was still staring at the GPS like it had betrayed him. So, what do you do? Like, for work? The man shrugged. Consulting. Consulting. Jay deadpanned. That's what rich people say when they don't want to explain. The man smirked. Yep. Jay shook his head, muttering something about ridiculous rich dudes, but his phone buzzed before he could complain more. He glanced at it, then nearly swerved off the road. Holy shit. The man grabbed the wheel to steady it. Eyes on the road, kid. Jay shoved the phone at him. Dude. Look. The screen showed a tweet from the governor's office. Deeply disturbed by today's events. Meeting with police leadership immediately. Captain, if you're seeing this, we'd like to speak with you. The man handed the phone back. Huh. Jay gaped at him. Huh. That's all you got? The governor just called you out by name. The man leaned back in his seat. And? Jay threw his hands up. Man, you are impossible. The man just smiled. Jay's Honda sputtered to a stop outside a wrought iron gate, its engine coughing like it was relieved the journey was over. The man in the passenger seat reached for the door handle, but Jay didn't move. He was too busy staring at the security camera swiveling toward them, its red light blinking. You live here? Jay whispered, as if the gate might hear him. The man didn't answer. He pulled out a keycard and held it up to the scanner. The gate groaned open, revealing a long driveway lined with oak trees. Jay inched the car forward, his knuckles white on the wheel. Relax, the man said. They don't bite. Jay snorted. Yeah? What about the guys with the earpieces? Two security guards stood at the front door of the sprawling estate. They didn't approach, but their eyes tracked the Honda like it was a suspicious package. The man rolled down his window. It's me, fellas. Brought a friend. The guards nodded, but their expressions didn't soften. Jay gulped. Inside, the house was all sharp angles and cold light, modern art on the walls, a glass staircase that looked like it would shatter if you breathed on it wrong. Jay hovered near the doorway, afraid to touch anything. You want a drink? The man asked, wheeling toward the kitchen. Jay blinked. Water? The man grabbed 2 bottles from the fridge and tossed one to him. Jay fumbled the catch, nearly dropping it. "So," Jay said, twisting the cap. "You're, like, a billionaire?" The man smirked. "Close. But you just roll around the neighborhood for fun?" "I like fresh air." Jay opened his mouth, then shut it. None of this made sense. Rich guys didn't get stopped by cops. Rich guys didn't ride in beat-up Hondas. Rich guys definitely didn't shrug off the governor tweeting about them. Unless they had something to hide. Jay's phone buzzed again. Another notification, this time from a news alert: police chief suspends officers involved in veteran incident. He showed the man. "Huh," the man said again. Jay threw his hands up. "How are you not freaking out right now?" The man took a long sip of water. Then, quietly, "Because I've seen worse." Before Jay could ask what that meant, the doorbell rang. Both men froze. The security guard's voice crackled over the intercom. "Sir? There's a Detective Martinez here to see you. Says it's urgent." The man's jaw tightened. "Let her in." Detective Martinez was all business, dark suit, sharper eyes, a folder tucked under her arm. She didn't react to Jay's presence, just nodded at the man. "Captain." "Detective." She dropped the folder on the table. "You've caused quite a stir." He didn't touch it. "Did I?" Martinez sighed. "Look, I get it. You don't want the spotlight. But this?" She flipped the folder open, revealing crime scene photos, a blown-up building, charred debris. "This is what happens when cops get sloppy." Jay craned his neck to see. "Whoa. What is that?" Martinez ignored him. "Daniels and Ruiz have a history. Complaints. Excessive force. But no one cared until today." She tapped the photos. "Because today, they messed with the wrong guy." The man finally looked at the images. And now the department's scrambling. The governor's involved. The media's involved. She leaned in. "But here's the thing, no one's asking the real question." Jay couldn't help himself. "Which is?" Martinez didn't break eye contact with the man. "Why you were really in that neighborhood." Silence. The man's expression didn't change, but his fingers twitched against his wheelchair. Jay's head whipped between them. "Wait. You weren't just taking a walk?" Martinez smirked. "Oh, he was. But not for fun." She pulled another photo from the folder, a grainy surveillance shot of a rundown house 3 blocks from where the cops had stopped him. "This place is a known drop for illegal arms. And guess who's been watching it for weeks?" Jay's eyes widened. "No way." The man exhaled. "You're good, Martinez." She shrugged. "I do my job." She slid a business card across the table. "The governor wants to talk. Up to you if it's friendly, or not." Then she left, the folder still open, its secrets spilling out between them. Jay stared at the man. "Dude. Are you, like, a spy?" The man finally laughed, a real, genuine sound. "Something like that." The detective's car had barely cleared the driveway when Jay spun toward the man, his voice cracking with excitement. "Okay, what the hell is actually going on here?" The man closed the folder slowly, hiding the surveillance photos. "You should go home, kid." Jay crossed his arms. "Not a chance. This isn't a game." "Yeah, no kidding." Jay jabbed a finger at the folder. "You're out here doing some Jason Bourne stuff, and now the governor wants to chat. And you're just," he mimicked the man's flat tone. "Huh." The man studied him for a long moment. Then, abruptly, "You ever heard of Redline Logistics?" Jay blinked. "The shipping company?" On paper. The man wheeled to a sleek laptop on the counter, typing rapidly. The screen lit up with blueprints, shipping manifests, a map dotted with red pins. Front for moving weapons. Stolen military gear, mostly. They've been supplying cartels, militias, even a few rogue cops. Jay's mouth went dry. And you're stopping them? Trying to. He zoomed in on the surveillance photo Martinez had left, the rundown house. This is their next drop point. I was scouting it when those cops stopped me. Jay's brain short-circuited. So you let them arrest you? No. But I couldn't blow my cover either. A bitter smirk. Didn't expect the kid with the phone, though. Jay flushed, remembering his video. Oh. Sorry? The man shrugged. Made things messy. But sometimes messy works. A notification pinged on the laptop, an encrypted message. The man's expression darkened as he read it. Jay craned his neck. What? Change of plans. He shut the laptop hard. They moved the drop. Tonight. 9:47 p.m. Dockside Warehouse District. Jay crouched behind a stack of shipping containers, his heart hammering. This was not how he'd imagined his Tuesday night. 20 yards ahead, the man, now in a black hoodie, his wheelchair left in a van nearby, adjusted an earpiece. Martinez, you in position? A crackled response, south entrance. 3 hostiles inside. You've got backup en route, ETA 6 minutes. Too slow. The man checked a compact mirror, angling it to see around the container. A flicker of movement inside the warehouse, armed men unloading crates. I'm going in. Jay grabbed his arm. Are you crazy? You don't even have legs. The man flashed something metallic under his sleeve, a compact pistol. Don't need legs to pull a trigger. Before Jay could protest, a shout echoed from the warehouse. Hey! Who's there? The man shoved Jay down. Stay. Here. Then he rolled out of cover, his voice suddenly slurred, hands raised. Sorry, man, just lookin' for a place to sleep. Jay gaped. He was acting, playing a drunk homeless guy. And it worked. One guard lowered his rifle, sneering. Get lost, cripple. Yeah, I'm goin'. The man wobbled closer, then moved. Fast as a snake strike, he yanked the guard's rifle barrel down and drove his elbow into the man's throat. The second guard barely raised his weapon before the pistol silenced him with a thwip of a suppressor. Jay's stomach lurched. Holy shit. He just... Jay. The man tossed him a radio. Watch the door. Yell if you see anyone. Jay fumbled the catch. But what if? Go. Jay ran. Inside, the man moved like a shadow. He disabled a third guard with a well-placed shot to the knee, then used the chaos to reach the crates. Wrenching one open, he cursed. RPGs, military grade. Enough to start a war. Martinez's voice crackled in his ear, backups 2 minutes out. Too late. He snapped photos with a burner phone. They're loading a truck. Heading east. A new voice cut in, deep, authoritative. Captain. Stand down. The man froze. Governor? This goes beyond you now. Let it play out. A cold realization settled in his gut. The governor knew. Maybe even allowed this. Martinez sounded frantic. Don't listen. There, static. Then silence. The line was dead. Outside, engines roared. The truck was leaving. The man made his choice. He lunged for the driver's side door. The engine roared as the truck lurched forward, its heavy tires crushing broken concrete beneath them. The man clung to the door handle, his muscles screaming as he hauled himself up into the cab. The driver, a hulking figure with a scarred face, swore and swung a fist at him. The blow grazed his temple, sending white-hot pain through his skull, but he didn't let go. With a grunt, he jammed his pistol into the driver's ribs and pulled the trigger. The muffled shot was drowned out by the engine. The driver gasped, his grip on the wheel faltering. The truck swerved violently, nearly tipping as it clipped a stack of shipping containers. Metal screeched, sparks flying. The man grabbed the wheel, shoving the dying driver aside with his shoulder. Blood soaked the seat, warm and sticky against his arm. Behind them, shouts erupted. Headlights flared in the rearview mirror, backup, but whose? He didn't have time to wonder. The truck barreled toward the chain-link fence at the edge of the docks. He stomped on the gas, bracing himself. The impact rattled his bones as the fence tore apart like tissue paper. Alarms wailed in the distance, but he was already weaving through backstreets, the city lights blurring past. His hands shook. Not from fear, from fury. The governor had sold them out. Jay sprinted down the alley, his lungs burning. Gunfire echoed behind him, but he didn't look back. The radio in his hand crackled with panicked voices, none of them the man's. Where the hell did he go? A shadow moved ahead. Jay skidded to a stop, heart in his throat, until he recognized Martinez leaning against a parked sedan, her sleeve dark with blood. "Get in," she hissed. Jay didn't argue. The car peeled out before his door was fully closed. Martinez drove like a demon, taking corners so sharp the tires screamed. "Where is he?" Jay demanded. "Gone after the truck." Her knuckles were white on the wheel. "Stupid bastard." Jay's stomach dropped. "They'll kill him." Martinez's jaw tightened. "Yeah. Unless we stop it." She tossed him a phone, live feed from a traffic camera. The truck was speeding toward the highway, two black SUVs closing in behind it. And then Jay saw it. A third SUV, unmarked, cutting them off from the front. Ambush. The man saw the trap too late. The SUV rammed the truck head-on. Glass exploded. The airbag punched him in the chest, knocking the breath from his lungs. For a second, everything was white noise and pain. Then hands dragged him out onto the pavement. A polished shoe stepped into his vision. "Captain." The governor's voice was smooth, almost apologetic. "You just couldn't walk away, could you?" The man spat blood. "You're trafficking weapons to cartels." "Not me." The governor smiled. "The state." A lie. The truth was worse. This wasn't corruption. It was policy. The man laughed, raw and broken. "And here I thought I'd seen the worst of you people." The governor sighed, nodding to the armed men behind him. "Make it clean." A gun cocked. Then. "Freeze." Martinez's voice. Jay stood beside her, phone raised, screen glowing. "Live stream," he panted. 500,000 viewers and counting. "You really want to do this on camera?" The governor's smile vanished. For the first time that night, the man grinned.